Welcome back to our Freedom Kitchen live event. I'm here with Annica, who is in Sweden, which is so awesome to me. I've never been in Sweden, so I feel like I'm visiting Sweden a little when I'm talking to Annica. And in this conversation, we're going to cover sugar addiction and her own journey and what led her to write a book for kids or about kids called Little Sugar Bombs. And this just resonates with me so much. Thank you so much for agreeing to be here, Annica.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
I think I could talk to you all day. We seem to have the same philosophy about many things. Starting with, we both really struggled with sugar addiction. What does sugar addiction look like?
Sugar addiction is that you can say no. I mean, mostly I like to say that some people say that it's like an addiction, but it isn't like an addiction. It's the same. I mean, it's the same like if you're using alcohol or heavier drugs or whatever your drug of choice is. And it's you can't stay stopped. I mean, you can stop every Monday and saying that I'm going on this diet and I'm never going to have sugar again, and I'm doing some exercise, and maybe you do it on Monday morning, and then at lunch you fail. You go back to eat what you've been eating, and you can't get off the sugary stuff or whatever. Me myself, I've been a yo-yo dieter all my life from very young age. When I was a teenager, I started my dieting journey, and yo-yo dieting, sneak, hide, and lie about what I've been eating, sneaking the things that I had bought, and also hiding the garbage so no one would have seen what I've been eating. And for me, I mean, an addiction, it affects the whole life, socially, emotionally, physically, mentally. And for me, I ended up being suicidal. I was newly married. I had two wonderful kids, healthy kids. We lived on a small farm. We only started our small farm. And from outside, everything looked happy, happy-go-lucky. And I didn't want to live anymore. That's where my addiction took me. And that was only food.
Yeah, it's amazing because I think most people are still um, oblivious to the fact that we can be addicted to food or addicted to sugar. And I think that this affects more people than we realize, and they may not even realize it.
No, and that's true. When I was struggling early, from early age, I can see my sugar addiction from when I was about 3 years old. When I had the assessment, the sugar assessment, it's a diagnostic tool to see if you have a sugar addiction. Then I can see that my first signs of having an addiction, I was 3 years old when I had the first symptoms of this illness. And I didn't even know that there was such a thing called sugar addiction. It was only until I was 20, 25 maybe that I learned that there is something called sugar addiction. And to me now, when I'm in the field, I've been working in the field for, what is it, 13 years or something. Now I'm amazed that I meet people who don't know what sugar addiction is and that it exists. But when I'm looking back, I understand, that. And it's also something that, I mean, all addiction is the disease of shame, guilt and shame. But I think that sugar addiction is really extra shameful because it's only food. You should be able to handle food, that you're not able to. You can't do it with willpower. You need a lot of knowledge. You need a lot of support. You can't recover on your own. You need a professional to teach you what to eat and sometimes even how to eat, because there are so many different phases. You can undereat, you can volume eat, you can exercise, over exercise, and there are so many phases on sugar addiction. So and you need a professional and someone else to support you around that can pinpoint the phases you have, because I was over or volume eating. Besides being a sugar addict, that was also one of my outlets. And I needed people around me to tell me that this was true. You're doing this. Can you see this in a very loving and helpful way, not putting shame on me, but telling me and teaching me. And that's very important.
My husband's that person who can eat one of, a cookie or a cupcake or biscuit, like I cannot eat one. And he's always said, it's all about willpower, which made me feel more shameful because I couldn't, when I start eating processed foods, sugars, grains, even, breads, um, I can't stop. And I watch that now in many kids. I definitely see that in my nephews, of the, you can't even get it in fast enough. My mom used to say the way I shoveled in French toast, you know,
Yeah.
I didn't chew it. I just like swallowed it whole.
Mm.
Couldn't get enough of breads and the sugary things. And it wasn't about willpower. And that always made me feel worse.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's very important. And also what you say about the bread, because the flour is also, when I say sugar addiction, we talk about sugar and sweeteners and flour, of course, because that's also when especially if you're having a volume addiction, that's usually what you tend to eat too much from, is it's breads or pasta or whatever. But what you say is really important, that it's not about willpower, and that's what we want to teach when you work with someone who is a sugar addict. They need to know and really understand that it's not about willpower, and they have to get tools how to handle the cravings, because if you're not a sugar addict, you don't have the cravings. And that's when you can eat one cookie or one small line from the chocolate bar. I'm amazed if when my husband does this, because he's also one of these strange person who can do this, kind of have a chocolate bar, and he takes one line and he puts it in the fridge or whatever, and I'm like, oh, do I have to have it there? Not now anymore, but it used to be like that. I mean, it's screaming at me, I have to go there and eat it. It felt like that. But really now I'm not having these cravings. My brain still has the patterns, the way into my reward center. And if I'm in special situations, the cravings can be activated, but now he can have whatever he wants, wherever he wants in the house. I don't care about it, and I don't have the cravings. But I also thought it was about willpower. But I was so relieved when I understood that I have an illness. That's when I really understood that I can't do this by myself, and I have to use the tools that when I was in treatment, they gave me tools to handle this. If I'm having a craving, I'm calling someone or texting someone or going for a walk, doing breathe work or breath work or whatever. There are so many tools that you can have to use this to get through a craving, and you don't have to eat it, because I can't take one. It's like someone said, okay, but, or the another thing that people wants to say is, but go and have an apple instead. And I'm like, what? I don't want to have an apple. I want to have a chocolate, uh, whatever fontaine, just pour it down my throat, or ice cream or whatever. That what I was like. So the obsession about the food or the sugary stuff, or the carbs and so on, that's nothing. You don't have it if you don't have an addiction. You don't obsess about it in that way.
That's why I hate the phrase everything in moderation.
Oh, yeah, I hate it too. You
Yeah.
can't do that. Some people can't do that. That's what I need to say.
Yes.
Addicts can't do that.
See, my husband can handle everything in moderation, but I cannot.
Mm.
And I witness a lot of people around me and in my family who cannot handle things in moderation. But the other thing I don't like about that statement, first of all, I think it's a pat answer, like it's an easy answer to let someone off the hook for something. Oh, everything in moderation, and then they don't have to do any of the deep work, right? That, because not every food is good for every person. And the other thing I have found as a health coach is some of us need more fat, some of us need more protein, some of us can handle grains and carbs, and some of us can't. And to say everything in moderation, that is not a good answer because we're not all the same.
No, that's true. And that's also something that we need to find out when I'm having people in treatment and working with sugar addiction. It's very important that they find their own fuel mix. I know what I thrive on, but I can tell my clients to eat exactly like I do because they might get ill, you know. And that's a fine line where you really have to balance the addiction towards healthier eating and not being obsessed, because you can go from being obsessed with food to being obsessed with weighing and measuring, or being obsessed with food that are almost okay, or you have to be very careful with how you use the food to recover. You need to abstain from certain foods, but like you said, you really have to find your own fuel mix, and usually you have to get help with that as well,
Yeah.
and that's very important. Yeah.
Yeah, there's really no shortcut with that. It usually takes an entire elimination protocol for someone to find what works for them and what doesn't. And until that point, they're just guessing.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate because we might even bounce from, one expert to the next or one book to the next because we're looking for the silver bullet.
Yeah, and also I think, especially when I'm talking about addicts, we want it done yesterday. I want to try a diet, and I want to lose weight yesterday. So what I'm doing with my clients is that you have to try this for a minimum of 2 weeks, but preferably for a month before we evaluate and see if this is okay. And I'm talking about a food plan. If I'm working a food plan with someone, I'm doing a first calculation, and give them a plan that I think that this is good for you. But if you keep having cravings, you keep being obsessed with certain foods, you don't feel healthy or whatever, a lot of symptoms that they can check for. If you keep having this, you come back to me and we rearrange, we take some things away, or we put some things back on, or whatever. You really have to be very careful with what you do, and to kind of let it bounce back and forth and try it out and try it again. And really, it's a lot of work, but it's really exciting also, because during the time you can see the client recover, both mentally and physically, and it's great to see
Yeah.
what good food can do. Good food is good mood.
Yes.
Usually.
Yeah. So, yeah, speaking of mood, so you actually said you were suicidal.
Yeah.
I was not a nice mom. I had a very intense job in information technology, and I was on call around the clock. And so I didn't get a lot of sleep. I did network maintenance in the middle of the night while my kids were little for more than 10 years. And so we ate out 7 days a week. I didn't have time to cook. And so I raised my kids on fast food and frozen foods and boxed foods. And I thought maybe my mood or my short temper was because of my job, but it was when I cleaned up my diet, because I still was at Hewlett Packard even after I recovered my health, but my mood changed dramatically, much more patience, much more clear thinking. It is amazing what processed food does to our brain and to our mood.
Yeah, it really is. And for me, you thought I thought that having a dinner done for me, that was kind of having a warm sandwich or something. I was only eating bread, flour made stuff, pancakes, or buying a pizza or whatever. I live on the countryside on a farm, so we don't have the fast food stores close at hand, but in some way or another, I always managed to have processed food in some way, and giving it to my kids as well, when they were young, really small. So I know what I can relate to what you were saying, because I really, yeah, that was a really game changer, when removing all these sugars and flours and going from just surviving to thriving. And, I've been in recovery for 16 something years, and still I feel like I'm recovering, and my body today feels healthier and stronger than it did 17 years ago. And I keep recovering. I keep feeling this feeling like, wow, I'm healthier, I'm stronger, and I'm getting older, but I still have this feeling, and it's wonderful.
Yes,
So yeah.
I'm right there with you. It's been 14 years for me. And I tell people all the time, I feel better and look better at 50 than I did at 36. Like I
Nice.
feel like I'm just getting started. I'm getting healthier and stronger as if I'm reversing the hands of time. And I think back to the brain fog. I think back to the depression. I think back to the lethargy that I had, which I blamed on having two kids and an intense job, but I want to do that over again to see if I was eating the right foods. I don't think it would have been that difficult to raise two kids or to have the intense job. It was the food, the fuel that I was giving my body that made it more stressful. And so I was on Zoloft, Ativan, and Wellbutrin in my late 20s and early 30s. I mean, here in the US, we just dole out anti-anxiety and antidepressants. The minute someone says, I'm depressed or can't get out of bed in the morning, you're given a prescription. And I was able to get off of all those when I changed my diet.
Yeah, but nobody asks about what you eat when you are telling them that you are depressed or have lethargy or whatever. They just kind of, okay, here you have some medications. It's I had the first time I was offered this kind of medication, I was 18 years old, and they wanted me to start eating it, and I refused then. But I had it later, and also I was able to remove it, like you said, when in my recovery journey, I was able to quit those, and I'm happy about that, really.
So we look at the number of kids now. They say that the mental health of our kids is declining.
Mm.
And we're not talking about the connection to the food, at least not in like mainstream media, right? I don't hear
Yeah.
any conversations, and I'm in a lot of Facebook groups, mommy Facebook groups, even die free Facebook groups, or Facebook groups where there's kids with autism or epilepsy.
Mm.
And there's little talk about food, the connection to the food.
Yeah.
There's, what we have 6.1 million kids in the US alone diagnosed with ADD, ADHD, and more than 60% of them are put on amphetamines.
Mm.
But we're not addressing the food. And you and I know firsthand that the sugar, the carbohydrates, the processed food leads to anxiety, depression, suicidality,
Mm.
among other mental health concerns. And yet we're still not having this conversation that the connection to food and the mental health of our kids. And it's terrifying to me.
It is to me as well. And now now you can see evidence that the connection between, because there are some studies that have been done, that they really connect the mental health together with the food. Changing diet will also change the mood. So, or really remove anxiety and suicidal thoughts and so on. So I think it's so important. And I also think it's scary that they never ask about what they eat. And my kids, I had the opportunity and the gift to have a third child when I was in recovery. So I really had the opportunity to discover, like you said, being a mom of three when I was in recovery, and the difference between being active in my sugar addiction and having two children, versus being sugar free and having three children. I mean, I almost can't compare those two worlds. And even though having a third child was even uh, uh, more work or more job and more responsibility, it didn't feel like that, because when I had my strength back from eating good food, I could have had another child, with all the. So, but I think it's so important. I went off topic, but I think it's so important to learn how to connect those two with how you feel, and mental health and food. They should be connected at once, really. If someone comes in with a depression, the next question should be, what does your diet look like? Do you eat a lot of sugar or sweeteners or flour mostly? That's what I see in my clients. I mean, I have the experience firsthand with myself, but also through hundreds of clients, when I see the health, both mental and physical health, um, really
So you,
improve.
so you mentioned the switch to good food, and you probably get this question too. People say to me, well, what is good food? I don't even know what healthy is anymore. This is how
Yeah.
confusing it's become because there's so many different diets and there's so many different experts and it's become confusing.
Yeah.
So what is good food, Annika?
When I'm looking for good food, I'm looking for foods with no labels on it or with one ingredient, one cucumber, one tomato, one slice of meat. You don't have any labels on them. I have some foods, of course, with labels on them, but then the less the ingredients list on the ingredients list, the better food it is. So it's whole food, it's unprocessed mostly. And for me, I'm also very conscious where my food comes from in the beginning. I want to know where it's grown and how it's grown, and where the animals that I'm eating has grown and how they have been grazing and so on. That's very important to me.
Yes.
So to me, that's good food. Food with with no label or with one ingredient, so you can kind of process it yourself if you want to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. When I was teaching detoxification, which led to me teaching diet, and I really didn't want to ever teach diet or nutrition, but I was teaching people how to detoxify. And you can't really talk about detoxification without addressing what people are putting in their body and then providing the right support in order for the body to detox. But people would come to me all the time and they're like, what does healthy look like? I'm like,
Mhm.
I don't know, because they're trying to fit some diet or some mold out there of something that they saw what some celebrity did, So,
Yeah.
and that's how I ended up with cooking classes, because I literally had to start teaching juicing classes, smoothie classes. With the kids now, I teach smoothie classes and I say smoothies should not be full of sugar. That's a milkshake.
Yeah.
If you're going to have strawberry banana, add some honey, add some yogurt that probably has 20 grams of serving sugar per serving, because you're using some store-bought yogurt. And then, so now you've got a 46-gram of sugar drink.
Yeah.
So this is how all of my classes ended up in the kitchen, was having to show people. They're like, well, what do you eat every day? It was hard for me too. So this is not a judgment, because this was hard for me too. I had to get rid of everything, but I was in pretty dire straits at 36, and I just found that I had to take it all away, and I just started juicing. And then, slowly I did some bone broth and did some things that didn't have carbs, didn't have sugar, but I had to kind of find my own way back then. Um, but that's why we need to show people, right? Because they don't know what is healthy. What does healthy look like?
Yeah, and I also think it's important, and that's also, I mean, regarding sugar addiction, that if I'm looking at my like Instagram flow, the pictures that I'm sharing, which shows what I'm eating or what I'm preparing for my children, they are the ones getting the most likes, because I don't like food, really. I don't like cooking. I don't like preparing food, but I have to do it because I want to stay in recovery. And
Yeah.
I like food. I like to eat food. I want to eat good food and healthy food. But I realize, like you say, that people don't always know what good food is. So I think we need to, even if I'm not very fond of it, I think I need to do it so I can spread the word about what good food is and how you prepare it if you need to.
Yes. Well,
So,
you and I are both also concerned about kids because they're being bombarded with colorful foods and advertisements. So they're really being marketed to on multiple levels, right? Just the colorful packaging alone when you walk through the grocery store, let alone the ads and the commercials that come up. Pretty much, it used to be the Saturday morning cartoons, but now it's any game that they're on, those ads are coming up on social media and on their games. And they probably are not aware of how many impressions a day that they're getting from these food companies.
no, and also where the stores are putting the candies or the cereals or whatever they're putting it, so the kids can see it and they can go to their parents and telling that I want this, I want this. They're putting it exactly in the eye levels of the children, on in the age they want to provide it for, so to say. I think it's scary. It really scares me.
It scares me too because we already know how it affected our mood and our mental health. And now the kids are eating more of it at younger ages because there's just such an abundance of it. And really, if we look at what kids are even being fed in schools, they're being fed all day snack packs, anything in packages that they, and so we really should be concerned about the next generation because if we know how it affected us, then we know how it can and will affect many of these kids. And this is the next generation of world leaders that we're creating, except we know they've got more ADD, more ADHD, more autism, and more mental health issues already than any other generation before them.
Yeah.
So when you talked about good food, we were talking about earlier, we were talking about your farm and we were talking about regenerative farming. And what I don't think people realize is that we have to get the microbes back in the soil in order to replenish our gut health, which will help with our mental health.
Yeah.
And so when we're buying the processed foods, it's stripped of all nutrients. But the most important thing is for us to go back to the soil and know where our food is coming from.
Yeah, and also, I mean, the processed food, they really, when you talk about the microbiome you have in your gut, that's where you have your immune system, and also where all the serotonin, is that the correct word in English?
Mhm.
That's where it's produced, you know. So if you don't have a good stomach environment in your stomach, you will be depressed. So it's so important that you have this good soil that provides a good stomach, which also provides a good brain, a good mental health. So those connections, I mean, we are living in a holistic world and everything goes together. And that's very important to understand. And when you have regenerative farming, it's not really to, I mean, it's regenerative. We want to rebuild what the earth and I mean, sometimes we talk about, like we talked about before, sustainable, that we kind of, we don't destroy it, we just keep it as it is. But when we're doing regenerative farming, we want to rebuild what we destroyed, what have been destroyed before. And I think that's, I mean, it goes hand in hand, everything together. We're rebuilding the soil, we're rebuilding the stomachs, and we're rebuilding a healthy mind and mental health, physical health, which can go back to keep regenerative farming or whatever you choose to do. I mean, it's like a big circle. It's holistic. We need to remember that. I think it's important.
Yes. And I mean, that is the whole gist of Freedom Kitchen in this event. And that is understand where we are. And I'm trying to help people understand how we got here because they don't seem to know how we reached this point. And so painting the picture of what does food addiction and sugar addiction look like, what has happened to our food, what is happening to our kids. And unless we get real honest with it, we can't change it.
No.
But there is hope. So you have a farm, a regenerative farm. You
Yeah.
are in recovery and looking better, feeling better every single day, healthier and stronger. Your kids are now starting to make healthy choices. We did talk about changing kids too quickly, they might rebel. So
Yeah.
we have to plant seeds with them, and those seeds will sprout as they start to see us get healthier. And I teach the kids in my cooking classes that it takes courage to be a leader, but I make
Mm.
it really cool to eat healthy. And then I say, your friends are not always going to eat the same things that you eat, but it's really cool to be a leader, and to choose healthy and be the model for your friends. And I'm pretty impressed. I'm really impressed watching the kids in my cooking classes make healthy choices. So all of this really is to say there's hope, right?
It really is. It really is. And I love the way that to teach children how to cook. I think it's very important. I really don't know the whole saying of this, but it's like if you give a man a fish, he gets full for one meal. But if you teach the man how to fish, then you can have him survive his whole life. And
Yeah.
I think that's great that you do teach our children how to cook with healthy food, because that will make them thrive, and we will have great leaders in the future. It's not only great, but wonderful, compassionate, friendly leaders, and it's so important. Yeah,
Yes.
it really is.
Yes. So your book is in Swedish right now. So
Yeah.
when it gets translated to English, we'll have to make sure everyone over here in the States gets little sugar bombs. Until I learn how to read Swedish, I can't wait.
Yeah, I've Googled translated so far, but that's how far I've gotten. So, but I do know you have a lot of good literature on how to unsweeten your kids. I don't know how to put it, but to lower sugar intake and so on. But I'm looking forward to translate it and to get it out there even more, because I want to encourage parents. It's not written for children; it's written for parents, so they can handle the situations. I have a chapter there where I'm going through the seasons of the year, Christmas, Easter, um, whatever, all the seasons, and giving some tips on how they can get through it without getting too sweet, alternatives that they can do or focus on activities or whatever. So that was one thing that I wanted or would have needed when I was in recovery and my children grew up, and what I was looking for all over. So I tried to put that all together in the book, and I hope it's helpful for other parents.
Oh, that is wonderful. And perfect time of year too, since we're going into that big holiday season
Yeah,
here, starting with Halloween, and then our
yeah.
United States Thanksgiving, and then Christmas and Hanukkah, and all of those wonderful holidays where we tend to indulge in family traditions. And I think the best thing we can do is start creating new traditions.
Yeah, and keeping the traditions that are about gathering together and staying together, doing wonderful things together, but maybe make better food choices so we really can connect. That's, really, really staying together.
Yes. If
Yeah.
we went back to like my grandparents' time and we were making things the way they made them, it might not be so harmful to make so one side of my family's Italian, so they made the casadeides. But back then, what I try to explain to especially my older family members is we weren't using as many chemicals on our crops back then.
Oh,
We weren't processing things the way that we're processing them now. So now, we've got to worry about bromine in our flour as an anti-caking agent, the excessive amounts of glyphosate, ADA, the plasticizer that extends shelf
mm.
life. This is what has changed. So those old traditions might have been fantastic if we could get the quality ingredients that we need.
Yeah, yeah, I know what you mean. And also, all the, yeah, the chemicals really from all over, not only from the food, but like you said, the things they are packed in and everything. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's everything is accessing kind of, you know. But if it would have been like our grandparents and back then, I think it wouldn't affect us so much as it does now, really.
Yeah. Yeah. I am trying to create more family gatherings that aren't just centered around food, because I just think that we've put too much emphasis. Food was part of nourishing and sustenance, and for some reason, it's filling another void. I think in what's lacking in connection and community. I think
Yeah.
what we really need is connection and community. Again, another purpose of Freedom Kitchen is to bring together community and hopefully fill that void so that we're not overindulging in food.
Yeah, yeah, but I think it's a great mission, and it's really important as well, because it's like, I mean, we addicts, we tend to overdo things. I mean, if one cookie is good, then 1,000 of them is better. So, I mean, before, like if we go back in time, maybe they had one cake to celebrate this holiday or whatever, but now it's a mountain with sweets and everything. So, I don't think if you don't have an addiction, I'm not the one saying you should never ever have anything. But if you have an addiction, you can't have one. But I mean, if you are not an addict and you want a cake, one cake or a bakery or whatever to eat with your family to celebrate, I don't mind. I don't care. But I also think it's important to remember what you say about connection, staying together, that this is the really important. That's why I want to celebrate the holidays, to be able to connect with my loved ones, really. Yeah.
Yes. Well, it's been wonderful connecting with you. We're very similar and like-minded, and it's so good to know that there are more people out there like you that are helping. Definitely, I would encourage the audience to reach out to Annica if you know anyone who needs coaching, support. If you even suspect, she has a diagnostic tool that can help you determine if there's a food addiction or a sugar addiction. This isn't anything to be ashamed of. We are here to help because so many of us have been on yo-yo diets, and so many of us feel like a failure because it isn't how much we eat, it's what we're eating. And some things just don't work for some of us. You can tell me until you're blue in the face that I need, like whole grains. They don't work for me. So um, this
Yeah.
is when you need a coach. And so I'm so happy to have Annica available to our audience. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this, Annica.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm really happy. Thank you.
Oh, well, until next time, farewell, but I know that we'll still be in touch.
I hope so.